All right, welcome to phase one of my three-phase fry screaming exercise program. In this phase, we're going to be covering three different types of exercises. There are going to be physical exercises. These aren't related to vocals. These are literal stretches and strengthening exercises for other muscles in our body to make sure we have optimal biomechanics for performing vocals. And then I have some breathing exercises just to help you understand what it feels like to correctly engage your diaphragm for inhaling and your core muscles for exhaling. And then lastly, we have vocal exercises to help you gain more control over your true chords and use them in a way that is more conducive for fry screaming. And as I said in the first video, in phase one, we're not really even going to be focusing on producing the fry screaming distortion because I want these exercises to set you up for success so that when the time comes, you'll have a greater chance of actually figuring out how to produce the fry screaming distortion. And if you have prior experience with practicing singing or false chord screaming, and you've been practicing those for anywhere from 6 months to a year, then you only need to practice these exercises for 1 to 2 weeks. But if you have very little to no experience with doing any type of vocals, then practice these exercises for 3 to 4 weeks at least. So let's start with the postural exercises, and these are straightforward. You can do them pretty much anywhere. The first one is going to be the yawn stretch. So you're going to try to yawn, and when you yawn, you should feel the back of your mouth, upper throat area kind of stretch out. It should feel like a ring of tissue is actually being stretched out. You really want to develop a big, open, resonant chamber in the back of your mouth and throat. It is going to help with projecting your voice. It is going to help with making your screams sound so much more powerful. Now, the next stretch is going to be a stretch for our anterior or front neck muscles. What you want to do is tilt your head all the way back and look all the way up like this. If these muscles are really tight, you might feel them almost start to pull your jaw open. If that is a good enough stretch for you right now, then just leave it at that and hold it for about 30 seconds to a minute. But if you want to make the stretch deeper, then try to close your jaw. This stretch is important because muscles that are tight typically aren't able to contract and generate as much force as they would be able to generate if they weren't tight. And there are quite a few muscles in the front of the neck that act on our larynx. This next stretch is going to be for our chest muscles. This is the pec stretch. Simply find a doorway or a wall or a pole or something you can place your arm on, and then rotate your body away from that arm so you feel a nice stretch running through those pec muscles. Once again, hold it for 30 seconds to a minute on each side. Do this for 2 to 3 times a day. When our chest muscles are tight, it kind of pulls our shoulders into this forward rotated position, and this is obviously not good posture, and it can interfere with the mechanics of our breathing technique and how we project our voice. Now that's it for the stretches. Once again, hold them for 30 seconds to 1 minute and repeat 2 to 3 times per day. Now here are some strengthening exercises to improve our posture and to strengthen some of the muscles in our neck and our upper back. This first exercise is called a chin tuck. Simply try to make your chin go straight backwards as if you were giving yourself a double chin. You know you're doing this correctly when your voice gets a little bit deeper. Make sure that when you do the chin tuck, you don't tilt your head forward like this. You want to stand up tall and push your chin straight back. Hold the chin tuck for about 5 to 10 seconds and do this 20 to 30 times just for a few days. This is to help you understand what it feels like to do a proper chin tuck because we're going to be progressing this to the chin tuck plus liftoff exercise. With the chin tuck liftoff exercise, you're going to lay on a flat surface like a bench or maybe on a carpeted floor, and you're going to perform a chin tuck, and then you're going to try to lift your head off of the surface by just a few millimeters. The goal of this exercise is to strengthen and improve the endurance of our deep neck flexor muscles. When you do this exercise, make sure that you're only lifting your head up just enough for someone to slide a piece of paper under your head. A lot of people have a tendency to really tilt their head forward as a way to compensate by using bigger muscles called the sternocleidomastoid muscles in the front of their neck. The SCM muscles are not the muscles we're trying to strengthen here. We're trying to strengthen the smaller, deeper neck flexor muscles, and those engage in that first few degrees of lifting your head up. The next exercise is the shoulder blade or scapula squeeze exercise, where you're going to try to stand up tall with good posture and then squeeze your shoulder blades together like this. Make sure that you don't shrug your shoulder blades up and back, but think about bringing them down and back. Hold each squeeze for about 5 seconds and repeat 10 to 20 times once per day. If you go to a gym and lift weights, then you can perform the shoulder blade squeeze every time you do a row. Once your arms get pretty much neutral with the midline of your body, then focus on squeezing your shoulder blades together. And that's it for the postural exercises. Now let's move on to the breathing exercises. I personally do not feel like people need to spend a ton of time practicing all these different crazy breathing exercises. Instead, I like to select a few key exercises to help people learn to properly engage their core muscles and their diaphragm. And once they really get a good sense of what it feels like to properly engage that muscle, just remembering to contract that muscle whenever you're doing vocals. So the first exercise is called the posterior pelvic tilt. You're going to lie on a flat surface, and you're going to imagine you're trying to bring your belly button closer towards that surface by contracting your core muscles. You should kind of feel the arch in your back start to flatten out as it comes into contact with the surface that you're lying on. And this can be a kind of tricky exercise for some people, so it's okay if you can't fully get it. Just do the best you can. Just focus on feeling your core muscles contract and trying to engage those muscles. That's what we're really going for here. We progress the posterior pelvic tilt exercise to the supine march exercise, where you're in the same position, lying on your back, but then while holding that contraction of your abs, you're going to try to march one leg up into the air just a little bit, then bring it down, and then do the other leg. As you raise each leg into the air, you should feel your abdominal muscles contract just a little bit harder. If you feel like all of these exercises are a cakewalk and you can do them no problem, then we progress this to the double straight leg raise. So same position, lying on your back on a flat surface, holding that posterior pelvic tilt, but then you're going to raise both your legs into the air. This exercise is easier if your knees are bent, but is much harder if your knees are fully straight. Try to hold this one for as long as you can, really feeling those core muscles contract. Now, with all of these abdominal exercises, the real goal is to teach you to contract your core muscles while keeping everything up here relaxed. So you don't want to be like clenching and really squeezing any muscles in your upper body. Try to shift all of that tension and focus towards your core muscles contracting while keeping every other muscle in your body as relaxed as it can be. And while you're holding out these exercises and feeling that contraction of your core muscles, focus on how you're breathing. Try to breathe in a very relaxed, slow, and controlled way while reducing any tension up here, turning all of these muscles off, and only turning these muscles and any other muscles in your lower body on that you need to perform these exercises. This is how it should feel when we are exhaling while performing vocals. Those core muscles contract to push the air out, but a lot of people have a tendency to contract other muscles in their body when they contract their core muscles, especially the muscles up here. So these exercises are not only to help you learn what it feels like to properly engage those muscles, but also to learn to kind of isolate them and separate them so that you're not squeezing other muscles, which is just going to create excess tension and kind of make you use your voice in a maladaptive way. So those exercises are really good to help you feel your core muscles activate and build that mind-muscle connection. But now let's try to do something a little bit more specific to exhaling. This is where we can do an exercise called phonation in water, and all you need is a jumbo straw or a vocal tube. Now, this is called a vocal tube, and the company that makes these made it a specific diameter that the research on phonation in water apparently said that this diameter was optimal. I haven't looked at any of that research, but I bought it because it was really convenient for doing this exercise, and I think it was only like $20 for 2 of them. But honestly, a jumbo straw will work just fine. And then you will need a container of water, and the way this works is you submerge the straw in the water and you hum into the tube, and as that air hits the water and bubbles through, it adds resistance, so it forces you to engage your core muscles a little bit more while you exhale. Now, phonation in water is commonly used in vocal rehab, and typically they only use like 1 to 2 cups of water. And the purpose of it is to reduce the amount of air pressure on the true chords. So when you are exhaling and you are generating that positive air pressure, that air hits the water and now has to slowly bubble through. So that creates back pressure, and the result is less net air pressure being exerted on the true chords, so they can kind of be a little bit more relaxed while they vibrate, and it's allowing them to vibrate with less stress. But the reason why I am using a lot of water is because I want there to be more resistance. The deeper that you submerge the straw into the water, the harder the exercise becomes. And the more forcefully you have to contract your core to push the air out in order to make that air bubble through this greater amount of water. And in order to make a muscle turn on and really feel that muscle contract, you need some resistance. You don't need a ton to where you're really having to engage that muscle and push really hard, but you need just enough to where you can feel that muscle contract. So I'm using about 5 cups of water, and for me, it seems pretty optimal. Like, I am having to squeeze and definitely engage my abs, but it's not super duper difficult. But if you wanted to add a lot of resistance to really force your core muscles to have to work, then you can use a balloon. You can either blow into the balloon at the mouthpiece, or you can put your straw in the balloon like I've done and use the straw as a mouthpiece. Now, a balloon adds a lot of resistance, definitely more than you need for doing vocals. But if you really want to feel your core muscles work and contract and really force them to engage while you exhale, a balloon definitely comes in handy. You can also inflate the balloon a lot to stretch it out in order to make the material a little bit weaker so that it reduces the resistance. But with the phonation in water or with using the balloon, just make sure that you are squeezing your core and relaxing everything in your throat. And so that is pretty much it for the exhaling breathing exercises. And how we exhale is the most important aspect of our breathing technique. And once again, it is our core muscles that allow us to exhale. The diaphragm only inhales. But how we inhale is important if we want to be able to scream a lot of words seemingly non-stop. We need to be able to quickly refill our lungs by forcefully contracting the diaphragm. So we can place one hand on our chest and one hand on our stomach, and we want to inhale and we want to feel our midsection of our torso puff out, and we don't want our chest to rise. So that's pretty straightforward. It's not really that difficult to perform. I don't think many people are going to have difficulty with proper inhaling, but the hard part is remembering to do it when we're trying to sing or scream a lot of words really quickly and we don't have a lot of time to inhale. Even till this day, I sometimes get tripped up on remembering to engage my diaphragm to inhale when I'm trying to scream a lot of words really fast for minutes on end. Sometimes I just am not focusing on it and I start to over-rely on my chest muscles to help me take those breaths. So it's something you definitely want to focus on, but that's going to be later on down the road. Once you get to the point when you can start screaming words really fast and you want to improve your endurance, that's when you're going to really need to start focusing on engaging your diaphragm to take those quick, deep breaths and not rely on your other accessory breathing muscles. So that's it for the breathing exercises. I recommend practicing them as often as you can over the next few weeks. But once you get it, once you got the hang of it, you're engaging your core muscles to help you exhale, you're engaging your diaphragm to help you inhale, then it's kind of like riding a bike. Once you get it, you're not going to forget how to do it. So I don't think people need to continuously practice breathing exercises. The hard part is just remembering to engage those muscles whenever you are doing anything vocally, and also figuring out how to coordinate how forcefully you are contracting your abs with whatever sound you're trying to make. And just starting to think about the tiny details like air pressure. For instance, if you're trying to produce a certain sound and you're just not quite able to do it, could it be that maybe you are pushing too hard and generating too much air pressure, or that you're not pushing hard enough and not generating enough air pressure? So just remember that the amount of air pressure you generate, how forcefully you engage your core muscles, is a variable that you can play with and manipulate. All right, now for the vocal exercises. The vocal exercises of phase 1 are really meant to accomplish two things. One is to help you build a good sensation of how hard you might be contracting your laryngeal muscles. Do we know what it feels like when we use our voice in a very relaxed and effortless way, and what it feels like when we are really squeezing and contracting those muscles in the larynx and the true chords? And if so, can we modify the amount of tension and make those muscles contract less or more forcefully depending on what we're trying to do? And 2 is to master vocal projection so that you can keep your vocal cords relaxed while you attempt to make your voice get louder. And the reason why this is important is because most people who struggle with fry screaming, it's because they are using way too much tension and they are contracting their laryngeal muscles way too hard. Because a lot of people feel the need to squeeze and contract and compress and generate a lot of tension in their voice in order to produce the distortion for fry screaming. The feeling that you actively have to do something in order to produce the sound and make it happen. But the reality of it is fry screaming is a lot more finicky and it's a lot more effortless than you might realize, but it does require very fine control over how much tension you are generating in your voice and how much you are contracting those muscles. Most people, whether they sing or scream, will have the issue that they are using their voice with too much tension and contracting their laryngeal muscles way too hard. And this can be influenced by a lot of things, such as poor breathing mechanics and poor posture, which is why I covered those exercises in the first half of this video. And it can also be due to not having good vocal projection, which is the second goal of these exercises, is to really help you master vocal projection and perform it in a very relaxed way. The ability to get your voice loud while keeping the true chords relaxed is going to be crucial for learning to fry scream, false chord scream, sing, whatever vocal style you're trying to do. Because typically what happens is when a person tries to make their voice get loud and perform vocal projection, but they're not using the right mechanics and using the acoustic amplification to make their voice get loud, then they over-rely on their laryngeal muscles and they squeeze really hard. It's almost like a reflex to kind of stabilize the true chords by contracting the laryngeal muscles a lot in order to stabilize them against all the airflow that we're pushing through the larynx. So if we can develop a high level of control over our true chords, then learning to fry scream will be easier, because then we'll be able to precisely control what our true chords are doing at any given time. And even later on down the road, when we're trying to improve our fry screams or learn other vocal techniques like false chord screaming and singing, then these foundational skills are really going to help you master whatever vocal technique you're trying to learn. All right, so these first couple exercises, I'm going to give credit to Melissa Cross because these are from her Zen of Screaming warm-up routine that she created many, many years ago. But it's the Z and the E exercises. For the Z exercise, you're going to produce the Z consonant sounds while keeping your mouth somewhat closed but still exhaling through your mouth. And you're going to try to feel the buzzing sensation either high up in the back of your mouth and throat. You might also be able to feel it a little bit more forward, kind of up in your nasal passages or in your nose. I like this exercise because it's an easy way to start understanding the sensation of what it feels like to project your voice. You should feel the sound waves kind of resonating high up in the back of your mouth and throat. You might even feel it a little bit more forward in your mouth as well. And for the next exercise, we're going to continue with the Z's, but while holding out a Z, you're going to then transition to a very tight E vowel sound, trying to maintain that sensation of vocal projection, but try to really exaggerate the E. Practice these exercises for about 1 to 2 minutes each, and once again, really focus on that resonance high up in the back of your mouth and throat. These next few exercises are for motor control and helping you to learn to use your voice in a very relaxed way. We're going to start off by performing a low-pitched hum, and make sure you are holding out that chin tuck while you do this, because that's going to help you get your voice lower. If your voice is naturally high-pitched, just try to get as low as you can and do the best you can. What's really important is that by using our voice in a low-pitched way, we can allow the laryngeal muscles to relax more. When we sing higher-pitched notes, there's actually greater muscle activity because the cricothyroid muscle has to contract in order to stretch the true chords. But when we're doing low-pitched sounds, the true chords can stay slackened and somewhat relaxed. So you're just going to hold the chin tuck, get your voice nice and deep, and perform some kind of sounds. Try this one exhaling through your nose with your mouth closed, as well as exhaling through your mouth with your mouth open. Once again, we still want to be feeling that sensation of vocal projection, but we also want to focus on staying relaxed and just allowing our true chords to flutter in the wind and freely vibrate as that air passes through the larynx. After practicing that one for a few minutes, we can then progress that exercise to humming different notes. Now, honestly, it really doesn't matter if you're perfectly hitting whatever notes you're performing. If you want to, you can go on Spotify or Apple Music and download like a vocal exercise program so that you can practice along to scales. But what's really important with this one is that we are lightly modifying the amount of muscle activity and tension in the laryngeal muscles by transitioning from different notes. You can also try these low humming exercises with phonation and water. And the benefit to using phonation and water is that as that air travels through your airway, enters the straw, and then has to bubble through the water, this creates back pressure, and the result is less net air pressure exerted on the true chords. And it is typically that sensation of air pressure building up underneath the true chords that makes people feel like they need to squeeze and tense up their laryngeal muscles, so that by reducing the amount of air pressure we're exerting on the true chords, we can keep them a little bit more relaxed and learn to use them in a more relaxed way. This next exercise is called the open versus closed exercise, and this is to help you gain a sense of how much muscle activity you are generating with your laryngeal muscles. So you'll start off by performing a more open and relaxed sounding E vowel sound, and then you'll transition to the tighter and more closed off sounding E vowel sound like from the earlier exercise. And with this one, pay attention to the difference in how it feels when you perform the open and relaxed E versus the closed off and constricted E. As you make that transition, you should start to feel the muscle activity of your laryngeal muscles increase. You'll feel those muscles starting to contract harder globally, as well as some of the other muscles above the larynx to make your throat more narrow. I really like this one because it helps people understand what it feels like when they are really squeezing those laryngeal muscles and contracting them very forcefully. With fry screaming, the amount of muscle activity we need is always going to be somewhere in between. It's never going to be super completely closed off and constricted, and it's usually not going to be super duper relaxed and flaccid. So pay close attention to what it feels like in your throat when you're performing the super constricted and closed off E sound, because that's typically what I'm referring to when I talk about squeezing the laryngeal muscles too hard. So all these exercises are fine and dandy, and if you practice these for a few days, you'll hopefully start to get some better awareness over how you're using your true chords, how forcefully you're contracting the muscles versus keeping them relaxed. But now you want to start trying to hum along to instrumentals. So, listen to the intro of a song and maybe try to perform the low hums along with the notes you hear. I really like to use the intro to the Halo theme song for this because it's exactly what I'm talking about. When you listen, you hear the low-pitched but projected and operatic sound of the vocals. Go on YouTube right now and look up the Halo 1 original soundtrack and try practicing along to that beginning part in the intro. I think it's Marty O'Donnell who's singing that, but you can hear how he's keeping his true chords relaxed and he's really projecting his voice well. this is exactly what we want. We want to be able to get our voice loud by relying on the positioning and the biomechanics and the shaping of our upper airway in order to create that chamber for the sound waves to resonate and bounce outward to make our voice loud without overutilizing the laryngeal muscles, keeping our true chords completely relaxed and just letting the positioning and the mechanics do all of the work for us. And this ties in really well with the next exercise that I call the announcer voice. If you've ever listened to like a stereotypical commercial on the radio or even on TV for a car dealership that's selling big trucks and SUVs, and you've got the narrator of the commercial saying like, "Hey, come in today and buy a new Hummer, buy a new Ford truck, consume, consume." Hey, 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 you want to talk like an announcer, you want to get some bass in your voice, you want to get your voice deep and loud. Hey, think of the car commercials for the trucks and the Hummers. Hey, come out here and get your Ford F-350 today. Hey, you're a man and you need a big truck. Hey, hey, whoa, announcer voice, hey. So this is a fun exercise, but it's also super functional for helping you get your voice big and loud and projected while also saying words. So practice the announcer voice, have fun with it, say silly words, do the best you can, but the next exercise is going to be a glottal attack performed in a relaxed way versus performed in a tight and constricted way. So a glottal attack is like getting your voice going immediately. It's an abrupt start, typically on a vowel sound. You typically don't have any consonant sounds that you're starting on to kind of build or ramp into it. You're just immediately getting your true chords vibrating. So pay attention to how it feels when you're performing that in a relaxed way versus a tight and constricted way. Hmm, 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 hmm. Hmm, 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 hmm. Mm, 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 mm. Now, one thing to note, I am exhaling through my nose on this one, but my mouth is open because once again, that helps with the resonance and helps you feel it high up in the back of your mouth and throat. Now, this next exercise is purely for vocal projection, and this is to help you start using your voice in the way that is most functional for fry screaming. I call this exercise a roller coaster. You're going to start on like a mid to low ranged voice, and you're going to incrementally build your voice up kind of like in this ascending roller coaster kind of pattern. Oh. 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 So if you think about this exercise as little waves that are rising and increasing, each time you reach the peak of one of those waves, that's where you want to be pushing the most air and really feeling that sensation of resonance and vocal projection. Another thing with this exercise is make sure that your head movement is mimicking the action of the exercise. So as I go up in pitch on each little wave, I am extending my head a little bit more until eventually I reach the highest pitch that I can do comfortably with this exercise. That is where my head will be the most extended. When you see people who are really good at screaming and they perform their lows and their head is tilted down here, and they perform their highs and their head is kind of tilted back up here, well, there's a reason for that. The movement of your head greatly impacts your ability to hit different notes, especially changing the pitch while you scream. So for high-pitched screams, the optimal positioning is going to be mouth open wide and head tilted back. And for lows, it's going to kind of be that chin tuck positioning because it kind of forces your larynx down and helps you get your voice deeper. And then having like puckered lips, but still a very open resonant chamber in the back of your mouth. So the whole point of this roller coaster exercise is to help you project your voice and start using your voice in a way that is most functional for fry screaming, and also to start associating different positions of your head with different pitch ranges. This next exercise is to start using our head voice or our falsetto voice in a more relaxed way, and you're simply just going to hoot like an owl. Hoo! 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 With this exercise, your voice should feel very relaxed, and it should have that kind of open breathiness to the way it sounds. You shouldn't hear any straininess in the sound because that tells you you're overutilizing your laryngeal muscles. We really want to start developing the ability to use our head voice in a very relaxed way. This may be very hard for some people who have a naturally deep voice because it's kind of like an unstable place for our voice. You may feel the need to squeeze and tense up to kind of get more control over your true chords in this positioning, but don't really worry about control. Just get in that high-pitched positioning, keep the voice relaxed, and produce noise. Whatever sound comes out is what comes out as long as it feels relaxed and has that open, breathy nature to it. Okay, and the last exercise of phase 1 is going to be taking that owl hooting exercise and trying to hold it out and hit different notes with it. Ooh. Ooh. So you can hum along to the notes of a song you like, or, think of a tune in your head. You can do Mary Had a Little Lamb or whatever. Just start trying to use your relaxed head voice in different ways, hitting slightly different notes in order to gain that fine motor control over how you're positioning your true chords when you're using your voice in this way. Now, I know we covered a lot in this video, but I've created a Google Doc with all of these exercises, specific dosage, and how many days a week to do it, and for how long. If you like straightforward instructions and just something specific that you can follow, I've put the link to that in the description. But in reality, you can just do these exercises for like 5 to 10 minutes a day, 5 times a week, and you can start increasing the length of your practice sessions after a couple weeks as your voice starts to get more conditioned. The breathing exercises are really just to help you feel the sensation of proper breathing technique, knowing what it feels like to properly engage your core to exhale. And once you feel like you've got that, you know what it feels like, you can contract your core muscles to push the air out, then really just start focusing on doing that while you do vocals or do any of the vocal exercises. And the postural exercises, just do those like 3 to 4 times a week, and you can start phasing them out after a few weeks. And so that is it for phase 1. Hopefully this information was useful to you. Practice these exercises for 2 weeks if you're experienced, 3 to 4 weeks if you're a beginner. Now, I know some of you might just jump the gun and go straight to phase 2. Like, I'm predicting that. But even if you're a beginner, at least 2 weeks. Gain the fundamental skills and then go learn to fry scream. But you're not going to learn to become a master fry screamer if you skip the basics. So that's it. If you like the way I teach metal vocals, well, please give a thumbs up, leave a comment, subscribe to Scream Theory. I'll see you all in phase 2.